memories. I mean, the serious memories of Bum Phillips and the Houston Oilers. And my gosh, as a Steeler fan, saying, "Oh, we are not going to the Astrodome," because I was a little kid cheering, said, "Oh no, no, we can't. We're going to lose in the Astrodome, even if we're the best team possible, and we'll never beat the Oilers." You always remembered the character, which was Bum Phillips. And we're going to talk today about Love Ya Bum with producer Vance Howard. Vance, thanks for stopping by. And my memories of the Houston Oilers, ugh, but I never liked them. Trust me.
Well, that was a terrific rivalry back in the late 70s, early 80s. I don't think you could have had a better rivalry. I mean, they came to play, they came to hurt each other, and boy, they had two terrific teams.
No doubt. So tell us how this all started with doing this documentary on Bum Phillips.
Well, it's kind of interesting. My production company, Lucky Number Eight, we want to tell stories that inspire, uplift, and educate. And I think that we picked the right candidate in Bum Phillips and the Phillips family. I met Wade Phillips at a charity event about 2.5 years ago, and that's how this whole thing started. Wade's got a Super Bowl ring. He coached for the Oilers back then also, and it sort of grew from there. And as we started to map out the documentary, we wanted to take people back to a time of nostalgia back in the late 70s, back to Houston, Texas. And if you'll remember, and I'm sure you remember, Bum took over a losing team. They were a terrible team in Houston, and he created a really good franchise and a winning team that's still talked about today. And it created an energy and a phenomenon inside of Houston, a love you blue, that's still talked about even in Houston, Texas now, of that energy and that excitement and that love of a football team, love of community, and love of a coach.
And the Oilers just speak of it. The uniforms, the nostalgia of different things. And we talk about Earl Campbell. And I mean, that's one of the biggest memories I have of the Houston Oilers is Earl Campbell. And just basically just how loud the Astrodome was. But then Bum Phillips with that legendary hat and just he didn't look like one of those coaches that we're used to seeing on the other side. Think about Chuck Noll. Totally not a Chuck Noll.
And if you'll see in the interview, I'm sure one of your favorites is Terry Bradshaw. He's interviewed inside Love You Bum, and he talks so highly of Bum Phillips. And I think there's a lot that can be learned even to today's society of how Bum treated Terry and how Terry treated Bum. They were completely rivals. They were completely against one another, but they loved and respected one another, and they appreciated each other's talents and their ability to navigate the football onside the playing field. And I think we can learn a lot of that, not just in football, but in today's society also. I think there's a lot to be learned from Bum Phillips.
And what did the people think of Bum Phillips that Bum didn't understand that they didn't get him? Did they think he was arrogant, the teams that were against him? Did they think he was just
Oh,
this? What were the thoughts of people about Bum?
I've never heard anybody say he was arrogant. I've only heard the word genuine. He was a genuine person, and you heard all those humorous statements that he would make. He coached through humor. He didn't coach through yelling at players or belittling players. He coached through humor. He coached through education. He coached through inspiration. And I think that's really telling also. But you look at all these great players, everything from, he took Dan Pastorini and he made him a great quarterback. And he did that through mentoring him and helping him. You look at Billy White Shoes Johnson or Robert Brazil or Elmer Bethea. I mean, all these great players that he inspired to be better than even maybe what they truly were.
Yeah, I got to talk to Billy White Shoes Johnson. I talked about those things, but that was the thing that you looked at Houston; they were all swag, right? And Pittsburgh was just the Pittsburgh. And where do you think they got the swag from? As
Well,
well,
I don't really know. It's sort of an interesting time. You got a little bit of swagger in Texas. Everything's a little bit bigger. But it had that big old hat that Bum would wear, those blue boots that he would wear, that big coat during winter times. He didn't look like your normal coach, and he had a flat top. He kept his hair in a flat top, so he didn't look like a normal coach. And I think that's kind of interesting too. And all the different players. We even interviewed a lot of Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, Terry Bradshaw was one that we interviewed, and it was kind of funny. I think you'll find this humorous. When we showed up to Terry's home to interview him, he had a dirty shirt on, his hair was messed up, and his wife made him go change his shirt and comb his hair back. And if you've ever interviewed Terry, he is just a lot of fun. He is a
yeah,
fun
I was
person.
his. He has a cookbook out, and I was hoping to get him on my show. Just didn't
Yeah,
happen. I don't know what happened. I was dealing with the publicist. You know how it goes. But I
I do.
always hustle, so you never know. At one point, I get to talk to Terry.
Well, yeah, I never know. Hey, another thing too that we don't talk about it a lot is, do you remember the game where Mike Renfro caught the football and it was a touchdown, and on the field the referee said it was not. So what the referee said stood, but when they played instant replay, you saw that clearly was. So today's football, look back at instant replay, and a lot of it has to do with that one play against the Houston Oilers and the Pittsburgh Steelers and that one catch. And I think that's a pretty interesting piece of history.
And what if that was different? What would history have shown?
Well, we don't know. The Oilers ended up winning anyway. But the point
Yeah.
being is he did catch that football, and it was 7 points, and it was disheartening for the Houston fans. But the Oilers had a great team back then. Let's face it, really did have a good team, and they played with a lot of gusto, and they played aggressive. And I think that's what made those football games between the Oilers and the Steelers even that much more dynamic and entertaining.
And Pittsburgh got even with them the next year.
They did.
Yeah. So were you a huge Houston Oilers fan,
I
Vance?
was. I love the
Yeah.
Houston Oilers. I remember Love You Bum. I remember they would have a pancake breakfast because the Oilers used to train in Huntsville, Texas, where Sam Houston State University's house. That's where they had their off season. And so all the kids would go out and watch them practice and train. And we got to meet a lot of the players, and they were always really professional and polite. And they loved the kids. They loved their fans. It was a great time to be a Houston Oilers fan.
Absolutely. And I think that's the great time. Uh Go figure. This just sounds so awesome of a documentary. And how, like,
Yeah.
do you look at, when you're producing a documentary, looking at the best sports documentaries ever to try to put things together to make it really a piece of history, like some of the good documentaries that are out there?
Well, we do documentaries that inspire, uplift, and educate. We don't want to talk about documentaries about people that have done things that we don't want to really hear about. I like talking about people like Bum Phillips, who not only lived their life in a great way on the field, but lived their life in a great way off the field. Like our next documentary coming out is about the great cattle drives of the late 1800s with Captain King and Goodnight and Loving, and how that inspired a nation with the great cattle drives. So we want to talk about good things, and the Houston Oilers in the 70s and Bum Phillips, you can't get any better than that.
No doubt. What do you think, people that are Houston Texan fans now, why didn't they just go back to the Houston Oilers? That
Well,
like the Browns did. Yeah.
well, I don't know. They moved them Tennessee Titans, so they're out of Houston now. And then a new franchise came in. But we even have Amy Adams. She came on the show, and she was, so complimentary of Bum and the Oilers at that point in time. And to have the owner of the Titans on there is a great inspiration to the film, because it wasn't a hit piece against anything. It was a piece about a man who did a great thing, and he was a great coach and a great person. And that's the story that comes out. We've got over 30 plus interviews of some of the great players out there. Robert Brazil, Billy White Shoes Johnson, Terry Bradshaw, Jerry Jones. I mean, Peyton Manning's even in the film. So we've got some great interviews about great football personalities that are doing great work in this industry.
No doubt. And who does Bum Phillips remind you of today? Is there any coach that reminds you of Bum Phillips?
No, I think
No.
Bum was. I think he was so unique, such a unique personality. The way he carried himself, the way he coached. I don't think there's a coach out there like that. Now, that's not to say there's not some great coaches, because there are. When we interviewed Wes Phillips, who has a Super Bowl ring. He's the offensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings now. He makes a comment about different coaches coach in different ways. And Bum Phillips coached in a way that was more of a personal, it was more of uplifting, it was more of inspirational, that it was yelling at somebody or belittling somebody or running somebody down to try to get the most out of them. And, Wes talks about that in his coaching career, how he likes to coach that way too. So I think it's sort of a football legacy with Wade and Wes. And Wes even talks about his son's 10 and is talking about becoming a coach. Could be a fourth generation.
Wow. Yeah. And how he was able to get everyone else in that coaching family and how good they are. That's got to be
How much
just,
they love it.
yeah. Because I think he was a teacher. That's what I'm listening to you. Seems like he was a great teacher of the game.
He was. And I think the world needs more of that.
I agree. Where can people check out Love You Bum?
Well, it's going to go digital and streaming. It'll come out on November 25th, right before Thanksgiving, so you can watch it with your family and you'll be uplifted and inspired. And when Bum passes, it's going to bring a tear to your eye.
Oh yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks again, Vance. I appreciate it. And where can we find information on all your films?
Well, we have Lucky Number 8 Productions, our production company, and so we're on IMDb. We're out there, and we're producing additional documentaries that hopefully people enjoy and be inspired by.